we go as hard as anybody in training camp and during the season. And obviously, I'm not one to complain because I don't get hit like the other guys do, but I will stand up for the guys up front and running backs and guys that take a pounding every day during a long season. The season's super long as it is and very physical. And when you're doing it over and over and the guys, their shoulders are getting sore and knees start getting sore and hips and hamstrings and quads and things, and then they reoccur, you got to take a look at maybe what you're doing. But I know we pride ourselves on, as a Pittsburgh Steelers, being a physical football team, so I know it's a fine line you have to walk.
Big Ben saying on his weekly radio appearance that physical practices may be taking a toll on the Steelers roster. So listen to this. The Steelers have listed 25 different players as out for a game this year, which is 8 more than the next closest team, according to ESPN stats and info. Mark Schlereth in the house. You know a little something about injuries and surgeries and things of that nature.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
You've had a couple in your day, but you still played. You're a gamer. I want to start with you, though, here, Max. What are your thoughts on these comments? Do you think they're a big deal moving forward for the Steelers?
Yes, I think they're a very big deal, actually, because I find it hard to believe that Ben Roethlisberger would come out and say this publicly without talking about it with Mike Tomlin privately. And maybe he didn't, it seems to me he didn't get the answer he was looking for from coach, and now is exerting pressure on a great and popular head coach, because he's a great and popular quarterback, publicly. Yeah, I think that's a big deal. He's maybe taking a bullet in a sense for his teammates because they're all banged up, right? He's like, well, if Mike Tomlin's philosophy is you got to practice hard, you know. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So if that's your philosophy and you got to practice hard to play hard, okay. But Roethlisberger's saying, hey, maybe we need to take our foot off the gas, heard and know, and now is trying to apply public pressure. I'm sure coach isn't happy about that, and that's just for his teammates. If he's doing that for his teammates and trying to lead in that way, what about him? He's an older quarterback who's taken a ton of hits, a big, strong guy. Before Cam Newton, all these hits were allowed on Cam Newton. They were allowed on Ben Roethlisberger.
Right.
Maybe the message he's sending is, Coach, take it easy on me, too. And if Coach is like, this is the way it is in Pittsburgh, what does that mean going forward for Ben Roethlisberger?
When I think about Mike Tomlin, the reason why I disagree and I don't think it's a big deal is because of Mike Tomlin. He's got the kind of personality where he's as straight up as they come, Max. He's just one of those real raw dudes. This is the way that it is or whatever. Let me know how you feel. Adjustments will be made. I don't think it's one of those situations where Big Ben Roethlisberger is saying something, trying to use the media to influence Mike Tomlin, because that'll never work. I'm quite sure it's one of those things where he's just being open about how he feels. Mike Tomlin's one of them straight up dudes. He's going to listen to what or hear what it is. He'll probably have a talk with him. If he hasn't already, he'll evaluate it and move it forward. I will say it is a concern when 25 different players are out for a game this year, okay? When you've got that, and then you also take into account the 2011 collective bargaining agreement where teams are not allowed to hold overly physical practices in season. If they're saying something like that's going on, that could be a different problem. But barring that, I think it's one of those situations where Mike Tomlin would just address the situation as he sees fit.
I think there is a fine line between being physical enough and getting that work done, especially when you have things that need to be worked on. And those things usually are at the line of scrimmage, right? There's a fine line between getting that work done and benefiting your team and then overly exerting your football team, and that's a hard line to play. I'm with you, though, Steven, I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger would step out of turn and say this as a way to influence Mike Tomlin. I think this is probably a conversation they've had in the past before, and I'll just go back to my own career. I remember a time in training camp where we didn't play really well in a preseason game, and Mike Shanahan had called a practice for Sunday, and John Elway said, great, I won't be there. You want to have practice? I'm taking a day off. We get a day off after we play. And then you know what happened? We didn't practice on Sunday. So sometimes those guys are the ones that have to stand up and say, listen, man, for the good of our football team, I've got my finger on the pulse of these guys in the locker room. We need a little bit of a break here. And sometimes it's those guys from a leadership standpoint that are able to do that.
What if that runs up against a philosophy and a stubborn coach? And Tomlin's my favorite coach. I mean, Belichick's the greatest coach ever. Tomlin is my favorite coach, right? He's a lot of people's favorite coach. I love his attitude that, you know, it's always talk about it. First press conference, Steelers football, run the ball, stop the run, right? Be physical and everything. But it reminds me of Philly gym wars in boxing. Philadelphia has legendary gym wars. People go to Philly to watch sparring. But for a while, they weren't producing fighters who lasted very long because they leave it in the gym. And if you have a coach who feels like, look, there's no other way to get it done on the line of scrimmage. I'm not saying necessarily Tomlin's this way, but if Roethlisberger feels he is being that way, and the coach doesn't want to make changes because he thinks, look, football careers might be a little shorter than some guys want, that can be a problem going forward.
I guess it could be a problem going forward. I just don't, again, this is gut. I don't know. I mean, I'm not there. But my gut would tell me that this is a conversation that they've had in the past before, and this is Ben Roethlisberger just being honest and trying to assess why you have so many injuries. I think a lot of injuries happen, honestly, because I don't think guys practice enough. I mean, I think there's a lot of what goes on right now is we always say it, you don't develop, like, you can't get in shape to play football by any other way than playing football.
That's
very
what
much
Tomlin
like,
told me.
Right.
Tomlin
very much like boxing. Like, you can run, you can do burpees, you can jump rope all day long, but there's a difference. Like, I was a state champion high school wrestler. There's a difference between running and working out and then getting on the mat with another dude and grappling for 6 minutes. I mean, that is the toughest sport I have ever participated in, and there's a real difference. So sometimes it's about going out there and playing, and the only way you can get shaped to play is to play.
You know, some people in baseball feel that all the arm injuries and the Tommy John surgeries is because people went to five-man staffs and pitch counts, and guys aren't developing their arm strength as they're coming up. There is that theory.
Right.
The other thing that I haven't ignored in all of this, guys, if there is a slight cause for concern, it's the words that Big Ben used when he said, I don't get hit, so it's not about me, but I'm going to speak up for the big guys. That tells me that maybe, just maybe, others have encouraged him to speak. And if that's the case, now you might have an issue.
That's what I said to start. He's taking a bullet for his line.
You might, if they went to you, because that, listen, Tomlin doesn't, I've been around the Steelers. I've been around various NFL teams. I'm telling you, Tomlin is not the kind of guy that you can't go up and talk to.
Sure.
He's not the kind of guy that you can't do that to. He's easily accessible. So if somebody is telling Big Ben to say that stuff, we got a communication problem somewhere. And that's not something that we're accustomed to hearing about when it comes to Mike Tomlin.
Would that be one dude or a whole bunch of dudes talking?
Well, I think sometimes your quarterback, and Ben is totally dialed into his guys. I mean, Ben is, I mean, he is. He's dialed into that football team, and he's matured quite a bit in his time as a Pittsburgh Steeler. You can see it. You can see it when guys are having trouble showing up on Wednesday and practicing, all those things. So, I look at this more from a leadership standpoint. I don't think it's been circumventing Mike Tomlin's authority. I think it's been just pointing out, hey, man, we're a little bit beat up right now. And sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you just, as a football team, and you have a better finger on your pulse of what goes on in that locker room, because let's face it, a lot of times the coaches are never in the locker room. They're upstairs, they're in meeting rooms, and then they're on the practice field.
Yep.
But you see it in the locker room, you see it in the weight room, you see it in the training room. And Ben would have his finger on the pulse of that team.
And there's no breach in protocol, Mark, where Ben wouldn't go to Tomlin first and say, hey, Coach, can I have a word? You know, I'm hearing from a lot of guys.
Right.
You know, we're banged up. And
but we don't know that didn't happen.
Yeah.
We don't know that he hasn't had that conversation like, hey, man, we're really beat up right now.
But maybe he didn't hear what he wanted to hear, and now he's telling it to the media.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is, I guarantee you this. Guys respect Ben Roethlisberger. Anytime a player stands up for another player because he's got their back, guys will lay it on the line for that dude. You got to take the lion's share of the blame when things go bad, and you got to deflect 100% of the credit when things go great. And that is, from my standpoint, quarterback 101 leadership.
Yeah.
All right, we got to leave it there. I'm hearing you're staying with us the rest of the show.
Really?
Lovely.
Okay,
Appreciate
super.
it.
Can't
yeah,
wait.
so you can jump in on this next subject. Max's MVP, Andrew Luck, blames himself for all the sacks he's taking. Find out what the guys say about it after the break. Does sound funny saying that, Max.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. And in part by Bridgestone. Your journey, our passion.
I hopped on the plane. I said, I got a priority. I need to be on the table at First Take. I don't care where you're from, what language you speak. You know what you get? Kevin Hart.
talking about he gonna take my job.
Oh, let me tell you how I do it. I'll find time to come here and do what you do better. I sit in my bed and watch you guys talk about nothing. What you do is assume that's your problem. I've never seen somebody that's wrong so much. We joke, we play around. If I don't talk about you, I don't like you, okay? But I love you.
I need that energy in my life. Don't miss First Take tomorrow. Comedian, actor Kevin Hart, he will be here in studio. It's going to be a good time.
I'm trying to figure out whose job he's going to try to take. 1 minute it's mine and might be yours. Anything's possible with this dude.
He might take mine.
All I know is this: he'll need a high chair. That much I know. He'll need a high chair.
You're such a hater.
He'll need a high chair.
You're so wrong for that.
Just make sure we look out for him.
He is going to moderate a couple of the debates, and I can't wait because I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to get some tips.
Make sure we look out for him. Get him a high chair, maybe some boots.
You're so wrong.
You know what I'm saying? Don't have a basketball any place in the vicinity. He'll hit something wrong.
He's such a hater. Can we get onto this topic? Colts quarterback Andrew Luck has been sacked an NFL high 20 times this season, but he's not blaming his O-line. Luck said yesterday that he thinks he deserves a lot of the blame for all the sacks, saying he can get rid of the ball more quickly to avoid the pass rush. Max, you like these comments from your MVP?
If there's, yes, I love these comments. What did Mark Schlereth just say comes with the quarterback position? In good times, you give everybody else the credit. In bad times, you accept all the blame. That's what Andrew Luck does. Andrew Luck is the one guy in the NFL. It's so hard to isolate value of players, and he's my pick for MVP this year. They're in a weak division, even though they don't have a very good team, obviously. But he's the one guy where if you equalize everything else behind the same line with the same receiver, same running back, the whole thing, same defense, he's the guy I want. He's the guy I believe has the most trade value in the NFL. I don't think there's another player where a team would go, if he could be traded straight up for Andrew Luck, that team would go like, nah, I don't want that guy. Because not only does he have like just about Cam Newton level ability, he's fast, he's big, he's strong, he takes shots, he can throw the ball down the field. I like him in the pocket better than Cam, as a matter of fact. But he also does all this stuff just like you want a guy. I mean, like, he's the perfect player. Now, I know he throws interceptions. Even then, I believe that's because he ain't afraid to lose. He's trying to win. He's trying to put his team in that position.
I appreciate the professionalism. I appreciate him taking a hit for the team. But I don't like his comments because this man has suffered enough over the years that he has been in the NFL. Last year, he had a lacerated kidney, for crying out loud, along with a bevy of other injuries. Already, he leads the league in being sacked 20 times this year. Right. We're not even counting the amount of times he's been hit. His first 3 years in the NFL, he was sacked 100 times, hit about 70 to 75 more times, and was getting hit last year before ultimately the injury took the best of him. This is the franchise. This is a guy that has the potential to be a future Hall of Famer. When I think about Andrew Luck, I'm sitting there saying it's not just about drafting, it's about developing people. Could you get me some help? Could you protect me? Could you get me off suicide watch, for crying out loud, because I am in danger all the time. Coming to the defense of your offensive lineman is admirable, but at the same time, you shouldn't put out there like things are okay. They are not okay. Andrew Luck has been exposed far too often, and Grigson and his developmental staff are the people I hold primarily responsible.
No, I'm 100% with you. I mean, it's one thing to draft guys, and you drafted 4 offensive linemen, I believe, this particular draft. It's another thing entirely to develop guys. You've got to develop guys, and you've got to teach guys the game, especially coming out of college, because it's so different. So you've got to teach guys the game. You've got to teach them how to be efficient and how to be good. By the way, it's not only Andrew Luck, and they haven't had a 100-yard rusher since 2012, I believe, Vic Ballard, for crying out loud. So it's been forever. And you watch them. I give a lot of props to Andrew Luck for at least saying, hey, man, I'll put it on myself. But the bottom line, those guys in front of him should be embarrassed. I mean, I watched Anthony Costanzo do things where I'm just like, really, that's the guy you decided to pay? And there has been struggles. I mean, there were times where I'd rather have George Costanza playing left tackle than Anthony Costanzo, because, you know, there are times when you just look at it and you're like, you guys, 1, physically you get whipped. 2, mentally you get whipped because you don't know what you're doing. There's a bunch of those. There's a myriad of different issues going on up front with them right now. And I give him a ton of credit for taking responsibility. But bottom line is you're taking a franchise, one of the great quarterbacks in this league, and you are getting that dude You're getting that guy.
He's wasting away in dog years.
Oh.
You're taking years off of his career. And by the way, let's also take a moment to point out how the Colts are the 30th ranked defense in the NFL.
Sure.
So that's just putting you 2-3 for a reason. You were 1-3 going into the game against Chicago. You're putting even more pressure on Andrew Luck to come to the rescue, and your running game is ranked 22nd.
So if they win the division, considering all these things, you have T.Y. Hilton, you have some guys, and we've brought that up in the past, who can catch the ball, but that's about it other than Andrew Luck. If they win the division, is Andrew Luck the MVP?
No.
Is he your MVP?
No.
Because he's mine.
I told you that before the season.
I think this year so far, even with all the shots he's taken, he's been one of the handful of best players in the league.
Not his performance, it's the team that he's on.
Right.
You got to be in a better team. They're not going to even consider
And if they win the
it.
division and he passes for 5,000 yards,
it's just not how it works.
It's the AFC South.
Right. Whether it's offensive line, whether it's the staff not getting guys prepared, whether it's the GM for not getting the right players, I guarantee you there are guys doing 5 to 10 in the state pen that did less to get there than what they've done to Andrew Luck. Because that poor guy takes a beating. Anytime you have to miss time because you lacerate a kidney, you injuring internal organs, your guys aren't getting it done at any level.
Shouldn't this do something for them? As everyone knows how terrible they've been. Shouldn't this rally the offensive line? I'd say behind him, but in front of him, when they see the quarterback taking bullets for them.
No, that's the problem, because you got cover. The point is, sometimes it needs you need to be brought to the light. You need to be exposed.
Oh, Luck should have called him out?
Well, I'm not saying he should have particularly, but you could be silent. You don't have to say anything. You could be very conspicuous with your silence.
Right.
Sometimes you should know that better than most. You could be there and sit up there and look at somebody and go like this.
Better to be silent or to take
sometimes.
It's, you know what Andrew Luck did is the right thing. Sometimes the guys will rally. That's great. But if you don't have the requisite talent and you don't have the understanding, I don't care how much you rally, you ain't getting anything done. And that's where they are right now as a franchise.
Marky Mark, real quick before we got about a minute. Your Broncos. Tough one. Tough one against the Falcons. Are they going to redeem themselves tonight at Qualcomm Stadium?
Yeah, you know what? From a defensive standpoint, they got exposed in man coverage in their linebacking core. And so it's an embarrassing loss.
And you can run on
it. Yeah, it's an embarrassing loss. I would fully expect to see this defense, this proud defense, this defense that is as good as anybody over the last 2 years, to stand up and nip this thing in the bud. They've missed some guys. There's no question.
A little birdie closely connected to Denver once told me, those folks up there are a tad bit sensitive. You say something about their defense, they get riled up. They get very, very sensitive.
Yes.
Well, they needed to be called out after the way Atlanta handled them last week. We'll see what happens.
This is a sneaky, tough game, a really good game, I think, tonight.
Yeah. I'm picking
the Chargers had a lead late in every game they played in, and they're at home.
You know,
they'll find a way to lose it. That's
me?
what the Chargers do.
Little birdie told me tomorrow's Stephen A's birthday, and Kevin Hart will be here. It's going to be
Kevin Hart is coming on my birthday? Kevin Hart's coming to say happy birthday to me.
It's your birthday.